The private jet touched down at 11:47 p.m., 3 days earlier than planned. Catherine pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the city lights blur past as exhaustion pulled at her bones. The Singapore deal was done. $2 billion signed and sealed. Her company's biggest merger yet, but she couldn't shake the feeling in her chest. Something tight and urgent that had been growing stronger with each passing hour. Her 6-month-old daughter's face kept appearing in her mind during the negotiations. Not the professional photos from the nursery photo shoot, but something else. A feeling. A pull. "Take me home," she told her driver as she slid into the back seat of the waiting car. Not to the penthouse downtown where she usually stayed after late flights. Home. To the estate in the hills where her husband and baby were sleeping. The 40-minute drive felt endless. Catherine checked her phone repeatedly, scrolling through the nanny cam app, but everything looked normal. Her daughter's crib was empty in the dark nursery. Probably sleeping in the bassinet in their bedroom, she thought. Her husband Robert had mentioned the baby was going through a phase where she only settled close to someone. The house was dark when she arrived, just the soft glow of landscape lighting along the driveway. Catherine kicked off her heels at the door, feeling the cool marble under her feet. She moved through the silent rooms like a ghost, past the grand staircase, past the formal living room that nobody actually lived in. She should go to her bedroom, should wake Robert and hold her daughter, but something drew her down the west hallway instead. Toward the nursery. The door was slightly open, warm light spilling into the hallway. Catherine's heart quickened. Why was someone in there at this hour? She pushed the door open slowly, and the world seemed to stop. In the rocking chair by the window sat Lucia, their live-in housekeeper. The woman they'd hired 8 months ago, who cleaned and cooked and helped with the baby when needed. She was holding Catherine's daughter against her chest, and the baby was nursing. Actually nursing. Catherine's mind went blank. Then it flooded with 1,000 thoughts at once. What was happening? How was this possible? Why was her employee breastfeeding her child? She stood frozen in the doorway, unable to speak, unable to move. Just watching this impossible scene in front of her, the soft sounds of the baby feeding, the gentle way Lucia stroked the tiny head, the peaceful expression on her daughter's face. Lucia must have sensed something because she suddenly looked up. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room. The color drained from Lucia's face. Her eyes went wide with terror. "Mrs. Chen, Her voice cracked. She quickly pulled the baby away, fumbling to adjust her clothing with shaking hands. "Please, I can explain. Please." Catherine found her voice, though it came out cold and mechanical. "What are you doing?" "I'm so sorry." Tears were already streaming down Lucia's face. "Please, Mrs. Chen, please let me explain. You're breastfeeding my daughter." The words sounded insane even as Catherine said them. How is that even? The baby started to fuss, sensing the tension in the room. Lucia stood up, swaying slightly, trying to soothe her. "Please don't cry, little one, please, something." About seeing her employee comforting her crying child while Catherine stood there like a stranger made her anger finally break through the shock. "Give her to me." Catherine crossed the room in 3 strides, reaching for her daughter. "Give her to me right now." Lucia handed the baby over immediately, stepping back with her hands raised like Catherine might strike her. The baby wailed louder, arching her back, reaching toward Lucia. That hurt more than Catherine expected. "Go to your room," Catherine said, her voice barely controlled. "We'll discuss this in the morning. Don't leave the property. Mrs. Chen, please." "Now, Lucia." The woman fled from the nursery, her sobs echoing down the hallway. Catherine sat down hard in the rocking chair, still warm from Lucia's body. Her daughter continued to cry, that particular wail that meant she was truly upset. Catherine tried offering a bottle from the warmer, but the baby turned her face away, still reaching toward the door where Lucia had disappeared. "I'm your mother," Catherine whispered, feeling something crack inside her chest. "I'm right here," but the baby wouldn't settle. 20 minutes passed. 30. Catherine walked circles around the nursery, bouncing, swaying, doing everything the parenting books recommended. Nothing worked. Finally, Robert appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up, wearing only pajama pants.
"Kate, what's going on?"
"I heard crying. Did you know?" The question came out sharp. "Know what?" "I was asleep. I thought you weren't coming home until Thursday." Catherine told him everything in short, clipped sentences while their daughter screamed between them. She watched his face go through the same journey hers had. Confusion, shock, disbelief. That's not. How is that possible? Robert took the baby and she immediately started to calm in his arms. He'd been home more than Catherine had been lately. Their daughter knew his smell, his rhythm. Another crack in Catherine's chest. I don't know how it's possible, but I saw it with my own eyes. Catherine pulled out her phone. I'm calling David, her lawyer. I don't even know what this is. Assault? Abuse? Some kind of, it's 2 a.m, Kate. I don't care. But her hands were shaking too hard to dial. She sat down on the floor instead, back against the wall, still wearing her business suit. Still wearing the mask of the powerful CEO who'd just closed a $2 billion deal, except now the mask was cracking and she didn't know what was underneath. Robert sat beside her, their daughter finally quiet against his shoulder. What do you want to do? I want to know why. Catherine's voice broke. I want to know how long this has been happening. I want to know what else I don't know about my own child's life. She thought about the nanny cam footage she'd been scrolling through for months. Quick 5-minute checks between meetings. Had she missed signs? Had this been happening while she was on video calls in Tokyo, London, New York? She's been here 8 months, Robert said quietly. She's been good with the baby. Never gave us any reason to worry. Until tonight. Until tonight. They sat in silence for a while, listening to their daughter's soft breathing as she fell asleep. Catherine stared at the expensive nursery around them. The custom crib that cost more than most people's cars. The designer mobile. The organic, ethically sourced everything. None of it mattered right now. I'll talk to her in the morning, Catherine said, with David on the phone. We'll figure out what happened and why, and then... She trailed off. Then what, fire her? Press charges? What did you even call this? Get some sleep, Robert said, standing up carefully with the baby. We'll deal with it when the sun comes up. But Catherine knew she wouldn't sleep. She stayed on the nursery floor long after Robert left, watching the stars through the window, thinking about the terrified look on Lucia's face, the way her daughter had reached for the housekeeper instead of her own mother, the way Catherine hadn't even noticed something was wrong in her own home because she'd been too busy conquering the world to pay attention to the one tiny person who actually needed her. The night stretched on, and Catherine Chen, Billionaire CEO, sat alone in a room full of expensive things, feeling poorer than she'd ever felt in her life. Morning came too quickly. Catherine had maybe slept an hour, curled up in the armchair in her bedroom while Robert and the baby slept soundly. She'd spent most of the night rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd handle this impossible situation. At 7 a.m. she was already in her home office, hair pulled back, wearing a fresh suit like armor. Her lawyer David was on speakerphone, his voice sharp and professional even for this early Saturday call. You need to document everything, he was saying. Write down exactly what you saw, what time, what was said. We need to be prepared for any legal ramifications. Legal ramifications for who? Robert stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one in front of Catherine. For everyone involved, David said through the speaker. This is uncharted territory. Depending on how we proceed, there could be criminal charges, civil suits, custody concerns. Custody concerns? Catherine's head snapped up. She's our daughter. I'm just laying out all the possibilities, Kate. You hired me to think of everything. A soft knock at the door made them all freeze. Robert opened it to find Lucia standing there, looking smaller somehow than she had the night before. Her eyes were swollen from crying, red-rimmed and desperate. She was holding a small brown envelope against her chest like a shield. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Chen. Her voice was barely a whisper. Please, I know you want me to leave. I understand. But please just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. Then I'll go quietly. I won't ask for anything. Just please let me tell you the truth. Catherine looked at David's name on the speakerphone. He'd tell her not to. He'd say it was a liability, that anything Lucia said could complicate things. She could see Robert watching her, waiting. 5 minutes, Catherine said. Sit down. Lucia sat on the edge of the chair across from the desk, perched like she might need to run at any moment. She clutched the envelope tighter. I don't know where to start, she began, her accent thicker when she was emotional. I'm so sorry. What I did was wrong. I know this. But please understand, I never meant to hurt anyone. Then why did you do it? Catherine's voice was ice. Lucia took a shaky breath. 3 months ago I had a baby, a boy. I named him Raphael. The room went completely still. I was pregnant when you hired me, Lucia continued, words tumbling out faster now. I didn't show much. I wore loose clothes. I couldn't tell you because I needed this job so badly. My mother is sick back home in Honduras. My 2 younger brothers, they depend on the money I send. If I told you I was pregnant, you wouldn't have hired me. Or you would have fired me. I couldn't risk it. Catherine felt something shift in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. Go on. The baby came early. 2 months early? I went into labor in my room one night. I didn't want to bother you, so I took a taxi to the hospital. Lucia's hands were shaking now. Raphael was so small. Just 3 pounds. The doctor said he needed to stay in the NICU. Special machines to help him breathe. Special medicine. Special everything. She opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out a photograph. Even from across the desk, Catherine could see it was a tiny baby covered in tubes and wires in an incubator. I have insurance, but not good insurance, Lucia said. The bills, they kept coming. $20,000. $50,000. $100,000. I worked my 2 days off every week cleaning other houses. I slept 3, maybe 4 hours a night. I sent every penny to the hospital, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Robert moved closer, his face pale. Lucia, what happened to your baby? The question seemed to break something in her. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice stayed steady, like she'd told this story to herself 1,000 times in the dark. Raphael died 2 weeks after he was born. His lungs, they were too weak. The doctors did everything they could, but... She pulled out another paper from the envelope. A death certificate. This was 6 weeks ago. Catherine's throat tightened. She thought about her own daughter, healthy and perfect upstairs. She thought about holding her for the first time, that overwhelming love mixed with terror. She tried to imagine losing her. She couldn't. The thought was too painful. I'm so sorry, Robert said softly. Lucia, I'm so sorry. The hospital bills didn't stop when he died. Lucia continued, pulling out more papers. Medical bills. Collections notices. Numbers that made Catherine wince even with her wealth. $200,000 for a baby who didn't survive. I owe money to keep my son alive, and he's not even here anymore. She set all the papers on Catherine's desk like evidence at a trial. But what does this have to do with my daughter? Catherine asked, though she was starting to understand. Lucia pressed her hands to her chest. After Raphael died, the milk still came. My body didn't know my baby was gone. It hurt so much, like someone was stabbing me with knives, hot and swollen and painful. The doctor gave me medicine to dry it up, but it takes time. Weeks, maybe months. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. 4 weeks ago, you went to Dubai for that conference. Mr. Chen was at the hospital doing that surgery that took 2 days. Your daughter, she was crying so much, screaming, nothing helped. Not the bottle. Not rocking. Not music, nothing. And I was in so much pain, and she was in so much pain, and Her voice cracked. I just wanted both of us to stop hurting. The room was so quiet Catherine could hear her own heartbeat. It was supposed to be just once, Lucia whispered. Just to help us both. But then a few days later the pain came back and she was crying again. And it helped so much the first time. I told myself I would stop. I wrote a letter to quit. It's in my room. I was going to give it to you this week because I couldn't do this anymore. The guilt was eating me alive. She looked up at Catherine with red, exhausted eyes. I love your daughter. I know I have no right to say that. I know I'm just the housekeeper, but I do. When she laughs, my heart feels light. When she learns something new, I feel proud. When she's sad, I want to fix it. I would never ever hurt her. I was trying to help. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Catherine sat back in her chair, feeling like the ground had shifted under her feet. Everything she'd rehearsed, all the angry words, they seemed wrong now. Not because what Lucia did was right, but because nothing about this situation was simple. David's voice came through the speaker, careful and measured. Lucia, have you been tested for any illnesses? HIV, hepatitis, anything that could have been transmitted to the child? Yes, Lucia pulled out more papers. Recent medical records showing she was healthy. After Raphael died, they tested everything. The hospital made sure. I would never risk hurting her. Robert picked up the photo of baby Raphael. Catherine watched her husband's face, saw the same conflict she was feeling. This wasn't a monster who'd hurt their child. This was a grieving mother who'd made a desperate choice. I'll pack my things, Lucia said, standing up. I understand you want me to leave. I don't blame you. But please, before I go, can I say goodbye to her? Just for a minute? Wait, Catherine heard herself say. Just wait. Lucia sat back down, hope and fear mixing on her face. Catherine looked at all the papers spread across her desk. A death certificate for a baby boy who never got to go home. Medical bills that would crush most families. A photograph of a tiny fighter who'd lost his battle. And underneath it all, a question Catherine hadn't expected to be asking herself. What would she have done in Lucia's position? David, Catherine said to the phone. I need to call you back. Kate, don't make any decisions without... She ended the call. Then she looked at Lucia, really looked at her, and saw something she'd been too angry to notice before. This woman was broken. Not dangerous, not malicious, just absolutely, completely broken. Tell me about Raphael, Catherine said quietly. Tell me about your son. For the next hour, Lucia talked about her son, how he had tiny fingers that wrapped around hers, how the nurses said he was a fighter, how she'd sung to him in Spanish, the same songs her grandmother had sung to her, how she'd only gotten to hold him 3 times before he died because he was too fragile, too small, too sick. Catherine listened. So did Robert. And somewhere in that hour, something shifted in the room. The anger didn't disappear, but it made space for something else. Something more complicated. When Lucia finally stopped talking, her voice hoarse from crying and remembering, Catherine stood up. Go to your room and rest, she said. We're not making any decisions today. But Lucia, you need help, real help. I'm going to arrange for you to see someone. A grief counselor. Today, if possible. I can't afford, I'll pay for it. That's not negotiable. Catherine's voice was firm. And you're not working this weekend. Just stay in your room. Rest. We'll talk more on Monday. After Lucia left, Catherine and Robert sat in heavy silence. What are you thinking? Robert asked. I'm thinking I need to understand what actually happened, Catherine said. Not just what Lucia told us. I need to know if our daughter is okay. If this was safe, if... She trailed off, rubbing her temples. I need facts. She called Dr. Mitchell, their pediatrician at home. The woman had been a friend from college before becoming their daughter's doctor. If anyone would shoot straight with her, it would be Michelle. Kate, everything okay? Michelle sounded concerned. Is the baby sick? No. But I need to ask you something confidential, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Catherine explained everything. The discovery, Lucia's story, the medical records. She left nothing out. Michelle was quiet for a long moment. Okay, first question, is your daughter healthy right now? Any signs of illness? She's been perfect. Actually, she's been thriving. Hit all her milestones early, barely ever gets sick. Good, that's very good. Catherine could hear Michelle's professional brain working. Here's what I know from a medical standpoint. What Lucia did, it's called cross-nursing or wet nursing. It was extremely common throughout most of human history. It's only in the last 100 years that we've moved away from it. But is it safe? If the nursing mother is healthy, yes. You said Lucia provided recent medical records showing she's clear of any transmissible diseases. Yes. Everything was negative. Then from a purely medical perspective, your daughter was never in danger. Breast milk is breast milk, Kate. In fact, there are milk banks where mothers donate for premature babies whose mothers can't nurse. It's considered liquid gold in the medical community. Catherine felt some of the tightness in her chest ease, but it was immediately replaced by something else, a different kind of discomfort. Why does that make me feel worse instead of better? Because you're not upset about the medical aspect, Michelle said gently. You're upset about the emotional aspect. Someone else was mothering your child in one of the most intimate ways possible, and you didn't even know. That's what really hurts. Catherine closed her eyes. Am I a terrible mother? What? Kate, no, I didn't even notice, Michelle. I've been so busy building my company, closing deals, being this powerful CEO. And meanwhile, my housekeeper has been raising my daughter. She was there for probably every important moment, and I was in some boardroom halfway around the world. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? My daughter reached for Lucia instead of me last night. My own child wanted the housekeeper more than her own mother. Robert reached over and squeezed her hand. Listen to me, Michelle said. You're not the first working mother to struggle with this, and you won't be the last. But right now, you have a decision to make about what happens next. Do you want me to examine your daughter? Make sure everything is okay? Yes, can you come today? I'll be there in an hour. After the call ended, Catherine did something she almost never did. She went upstairs to the nursery and just watched her daughter sleep. Really watched. Studied the tiny features, the way her chest rose and fell, the little sounds she made. The baby's room was full of expensive things. A crib that cost $5,000, organic cotton sheets, a mobile made by some famous artist. But looking around now, Catherine noticed other things. A handmade blanket folded on the chair, colorful and soft. A small stuffed elephant that looked worn and loved. A book in Spanish on the shelf. Lucia's Touches. Lucia's Love. Catherine pulled out her phone and opened the Nanny Cam app. She'd been checking it for months, but always just quick glances. 5-minute reviews between meetings. She'd never actually sat and watched. She started scrolling back through footage. Days. Weeks. Months. What she saw made her throat tighten. Lucia singing to the baby while folding laundry, dancing with her in the kitchen to Spanish music, reading to her with such animation and joy, teaching her to clap, celebrating when she rolled over for the first time, holding her when she cried with such tenderness and patience. But more than that, Catherine saw the moments in between. The way Lucia kissed the baby's forehead for no reason, the way she talked to her constantly, explaining everything she was doing. Now we're folding the blue shirt, see? Blue like the sky. The way she protected her, always one hand hovering close when the baby was trying something new. Catherine saw love, pure, genuine, constant love. She also saw herself. Quick kisses before rushing out the door, distracted feedings while answering emails, that conference call where she'd held the baby on her lap but barely looked at her. Too focused on the screen. The footage didn't lie. Robert found her sitting on the nursery floor, tears streaming down her face, phone clutched in her hand. "Hey," he said softly, sitting beside her. "What's wrong?" "I missed it," Catherine whispered. "I missed so much. Look." She showed him the footage of their daughter's first time rolling over. Lucia was there, cheering and clapping. Catherine had been in Tokyo. Look at this one. The baby's first laugh. Catherine had been in a board meeting. And this. The first time she'd eaten solid food, making a hilarious, disgusted face. Catherine had been on a plane to London. "Kate, you can't do this to yourself. Why not?" "It's true. I've been so focused on building my empire that I let someone else build a relationship with my daughter. And you know what the worst part is?" She looked up at him. "Lucia doesn't have anything. No money, no power, no safety net. She just lost her own child. She's drowning in debt. And somehow she still had more love and attention to give my daughter than I did. That's not fairing, isn't it? Look at these videos, Robert. Really look at them. Lucia has been more of a mother to our baby than I have." Robert was quiet for a moment. "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know." Catherine wiped her eyes. "Part of me wants to fire her. Tell her to leave and never come back, because it hurts too much to be confronted with my own failures. But another part of me thinks..." She paused. "What kind of person would I be if I punished her for loving my daughter when I couldn't be bothered to?" Dr. Michelle arrived an hour later and did a complete examination of the baby. Every test, every measurement, every check came back perfect. More than perfect. The baby was healthy, happy, and developing beautifully. "Whatever's been happening here," Michelle said as she packed up her medical bag, "it hasn't harmed your daughter. Physically, she's thriving." After Michelle left, Catherine sat with Robert on the back patio while the baby napped. The estate stretched out before them. Acres of manicured lawn, gardens, a pool that sparkled in the afternoon sun. All this wealth, and Catherine had never felt more uncertain about anything in her life. "I've been thinking about something," Robert said. "About what Lucia said, that she loves our daughter. I know, that part bothers me too. Does it? Or does it bother you that maybe our daughter loves her back?" Catherine didn't answer because they both knew the truth. "My mother worked 3 jobs when I was growing up," Robert continued. "You know this story. And Mrs. Patterson from next door, she watched me after school. She made me snacks, helped with my homework, came to my school plays when Mom couldn't. And I loved Mrs. Patterson, I really did. But it never took away from how much I loved my mom. That's different, is it? Kids have big hearts, Kate. They don't have a limited amount of love to give. Loving Lucia doesn't mean our daughter can't love us." Catherine thought about her own mother. Cold, distant, always working. She'd sworn she'd be different, better. But here she was, making the same mistakes. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. Maybe you don't have to fix it. Maybe you just have to decide what kind of life you want moving forward. That night, Catherine couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about Lucia's face when she talked about Raphael. The way her voice broke. The way she held that photograph like it was the most precious thing in the world. Catherine had built a billion-dollar company. She'd negotiated with world leaders and tech giants. She'd been on magazine covers and given keynote speeches. But she'd never known real loss. Not like that. Not the kind that breaks you completely. At 3 a.m, she made a decision. She didn't know if it was the right one. She didn't know if people would understand. But for the first time in her life, Catherine Chen wasn't thinking about what made business sense. She was thinking about what felt human. Monday morning came with gray clouds and the threat of rain. Catherine had spent the entire weekend thinking, barely sleeping, weighing every option. She'd called David 3 more times. She'd talked to Robert until 2 a.m. She'd held her daughter and cried more than she had in years. Now Lucia sat across from her again in the home office, looking like she'd aged a decade in 3 days. Her bag was packed and waiting by the door of her room. She expected to be fired, maybe worse. "I've made a decision," Catherine said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. "And I need you to listen to everything before you respond." Lucia nodded, her eyes already filling with tears. "What you did was a violation of trust, of boundaries, of everything that should exist between an employer and employee. You know this. I know this. We can't pretend otherwise, I know." "I'm so sorry, but," Catherine continued, raising her hand, "I've spent 3 days trying to understand why you did it. And I've realized something important. You didn't do this to hurt anyone. You did it because you were in pain. Because you'd lost your child and your body didn't understand he was gone. Because my daughter was crying and nothing else helped. Because in that moment you saw 2 people suffering and you tried to stop the suffering." Lucia wiped her eyes but said nothing. "I talked to my pediatrician multiple times. She explained that what you did, medically speaking, wasn't dangerous. My daughter was never at risk. You made sure of that. You had yourself tested. You were careful." Catherine paused. "But this was never really about medical safety, was it?" "No," Lucia whispered. "It's about something else. Something I've been avoiding looking at." Catherine stood up and walked to the window. "I've been a terrible mother." "Mrs. Chen, no. Let me finish. I've been a terrible mother. Not because I work. Not because I have ambitions. But because I've used those things as an excuse to not be present. I've missed almost every important moment in my daughter's life. And do you know who was there instead? You were." The rain started, soft drops against the window. "I watched the footage, Lucia. All of it. Hours and hours of it. And I saw how you love my daughter. Really love her. The way you talk to her, play with her, teach her. The patience you have. The joy on your face when she learns something new." Catherine turned around. "You've been more of a mother to her than I have. And that kills me. But it's true, you're her mother. Nothing changes that, doesn't it? Being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about showing up, being there." "And I haven't been," Catherine sat back down. "So here's my decision. I'm not firing you." Lucia's head snapped up, shock written across her face. "I'm not firing you, but things can't continue the way they were. I'm offering you a new position. Not as a housekeeper, as a nanny, an official nanny with a real salary. 4 times what you're making now. Mrs. Chen, I can't." "You can and you will, because my daughter needs you. She loves you. I saw it in every frame of that footage. And I'm not cruel enough to take away someone she loves just because my ego is hurt." Lucia was crying openly now. "But there are conditions," Catherine said. "You see a therapist. Every week. No exceptions. You need help processing what happened to Raphael. Professional help. And the nursing stops completely. I know you understand why." "Yes, of course. It was already ending anyway. The milk is almost gone." "Good." Catherine pulled out another envelope, this one thick with papers. "I've also done something else. I paid off your hospital bills." "All of them," Lucia stared at her. "What, $200,000? "It's done. The debt is cleared." "No." Lucia shook her head violently. "No, I can't accept that. That's too much. It's already done. The checks were sent Friday." "You can't give it back." Catherine's voice softened. "Lucia, you lost your son. You shouldn't have to spend the rest of your life paying for the privilege of watching him die. No one should have to do that. Lucia put her face in her hands and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside her. Catherine let her cry. She even moved her box of tissues closer. When Lucia finally looked up, her face was blotchy and wet. "Why are you doing this?" "I don't understand. I betrayed you, did you? Or did you love my daughter when I wasn't around to do it myself?" Catherine leaned forward. "Here's what I realized this weekend. I can fire you. I can make you disappear from our lives. I can pretend none of this happened. But that doesn't change the fact that I need to be better. I need to be more present. I need to actually raise my daughter instead of just paying people to do it for me. You're an amazing woman. You've built something incredible. I've built a company, but I'm failing at building a relationship with my own child." Catherine's voice cracked slightly. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay and be her nanny, and I'm going to step back from my company. Not completely, but enough. I'm bringing in a co-CEO to share responsibilities. I'm going to work from home 3 days a week. I'm going to be there for bedtime every single night. I'm going to actually be a mother." She pulled out one more paper. "I'm also starting a foundation."
In Raphael's name.
"To help families who can't afford NICU care. Families like yours who have to choose between going into crushing debt or watching their babies die without treatment." Lucia looked at the paper, at baby Raphael's name printed at the top. Her hands shook as she took it. "You're going to help run it," Catherine continued. "You know what it's like. You know what these families need. Your experience matters. Your son's life mattered. And this way, maybe something good can come from all this pain. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll stay. Say you'll help me learn how to be better." For a long moment, Lucia just stared at the papers in her hands. The nanny contract. The paid-off hospital bills. The foundation bearing her dead son's name. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why are you being so kind?" Catherine thought about that question. About all the reasons she could give. Because it was the right thing to do. Because her daughter needed Lucia. Because the situation was more complicated than she'd first thought. But in the end, she gave the truest answer. "Because you showed me something I didn't want to see. That love isn't about money or power or success. It's about showing up. Being present. Putting someone else's needs before your own." Catherine's voice got quiet. "You lost everything, and you still had room in your heart to love my daughter. That's not something I can fire. That's something I need to learn from." Lucia nodded slowly. "I'll stay, and I'll try my best. That's all any of us can do." They sat in silence for a moment, the rain picking up outside. Then Lucia asked, "Can I see her?" "The baby?" "Of course. But Lucia?" Catherine stood up. "This time I'm coming with you. I want to watch how you do it. How you make her laugh. How you calm her down when she's fussy. I want to learn from you." They walked to the nursery together, and for the first time, Catherine didn't feel like Lucia was taking something from her. She felt like maybe, just maybe, they were both giving something to her daughter. Different things. Equally important things. The baby was awake, playing with her toes. When she saw Lucia, her whole face lit up with joy. When she saw Catherine right behind her, she smiled too. "Hey, sweet girl," Catherine said, picking her up. The baby snuggled into her shoulder, and Catherine felt something settle in her chest. "Mama's here. Mama's going to be here a lot more from now on." Lucia stood nearby, smiling through tears. "Show me how you do that thing," Catherine said. "That little song you sing when you change her diaper. I saw it on the footage. She loves it," and Lucia sang. A Spanish lullaby about stars and dreams and promises. Catherine listened, memorizing every word, every note. Learning. Later that day, Catherine called her board of directors. She'd already picked her co-CEO. She'd already drafted her new schedule. Some of them would be angry. Some wouldn't understand. But for the first time in her career, Catherine didn't care. She was done conquering the world. It was time to show up for the one small person who actually needed her to. That night, Robert found her in the nursery again, rocking their daughter to sleep. "How'd it go with Lucia?" "She's staying." "And I'm changing." "Everything's changing. Good changes?" Catherine looked down at her daughter's peaceful face. "I think so. Ask me again in a few months why your mother called. She heard about the co-CEO thing. She's not happy. I know. She thinks I'm throwing away everything I've built." "Are you?" Catherine thought about that. About her empire, her reputation, her legacy. Then she thought about missing her daughter's first laugh, first steps, first words. No, she said finally. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just finally figuring out what actually matters. 6 months passed like water through fingers. Fast and slow at the same time. Everything changed, and yet the house on the hill looked the same from the outside. But inside was a completely different story. Catherine sat on the living room floor on a Tuesday afternoon, something that would have been impossible a year ago. Her laptop was open beside her, but she wasn't looking at it. She was watching her 1-year-old daughter stack blocks with intense concentration, her little tongue sticking out the way it always did when she was focused. Good job, baby girl, Catherine said as the tower reached 5 blocks high. Her daughter looked up and grinned, then deliberately knocked the whole thing down, laughing at the crash. Again? Catherine asked, and the baby clapped her hands. Lucia came in carrying a laundry basket, smiling at the scene. She's been doing that for 20 minutes. Build it up, knock it down, over and over. It's her favorite game today. Catherine started stacking blocks again. 6 months ago, watching Lucia enter a room would have filled Catherine with complicated feelings. Jealousy, guilt, resentment. Now it just felt normal. Like family, because that's what they'd become. Slowly. Awkwardly at first. But family nonetheless. Coffee? Lucia asked. Please. I have a video call in 30 minutes. The one about the foundation? Yeah. We have 17 families on the waiting list now. We need to figure out funding for the next quarter. Lucia set down the laundry and sat on the couch. I still can't believe how much it's grown. Catherine couldn't believe it either. The Raphael Foundation had started small. Just her money, her contacts, her determination to do something good. But word spread fast. Other mothers who'd lost babies, families drowning in medical debt, news articles about the young woman helping others after losing her own son. Lucia had been interviewed 3 times now. Each time, Catherine watched her get stronger. Watched her tell Raphael's story with sadness, but also with purpose. Her son had died, but his name was saving other babies. That meant something. Mrs. Patterson called, Lucia said. 3 more families in the NICU at General Hospital need help. Add them to the list. We'll review them tomorrow. You mean we'll review them together? Like always? Catherine smiled. Like always. It had been Robert's mother who suggested bringing Lucia's family to the United States. Catherine had been hesitant at first, unsure if it was overstepping. But when she saw how Lucia lit up at the mention of seeing her mother and brothers again, she couldn't say no. Now Lucia's mother, a gentle woman named Teresa who spoke almost no English, lived in the renovated guest house with Lucia's 2 teenage brothers. The boys were in school, thriving, already speaking English better than their sister. Teresa helped with cooking and gardening, refusing to be idle even though Catherine told her she didn't have to work. Your family is doing well? Catherine asked, watching her daughter try to stack 6 blocks this time. Miguel got an A on his math test, and Carlos made the soccer team. That's wonderful. My mother, she asks me every day if this is real, if we really get to stay here, if this life is really ours now. Catherine felt that familiar tightness in her chest. It's real. You're not going anywhere. The blocks crashed down again and the baby squealed with delight. These were the moments Catherine had been missing. Not the big milestones, though she was there for those now too. But these small ordinary moments that made up a life. A Tuesday afternoon on the floor. Building blocks. Drinking coffee. Talking about math tests and soccer teams. Her phone buzzed. A text from her co-CEO about the merger they were negotiating. Catherine read it, typed a quick response, then put the phone face down. It could wait. Everything could wait 30 minutes while she played with her daughter. That was the biggest change, really. Learning that the world didn't end if she wasn't available every second. Learning that her company ran fine without her constant involvement. Learning that she was more than her work. You know what's funny? Catherine said. My mother still doesn't understand what I did. She thinks I gave up everything. Did you? Lucia asked gently. Catherine looked at her daughter, now trying to put a block on her own head like a hat. I gave up 60-hour work weeks. I gave up being on every call, every meeting, every decision. I gave up thinking my company was the most important thing in my life. She paused. But I gained this, so no, I didn't give up anything important.